Welcome back to Around the Rim. It's Rocky Mountain Showdown week for the men's team as they come home from their tournament in Florida, and the women need to figure out from their own blunder to the Buffs. Today I'm joined by Jessica Mendoza, as always at this point, and we've got special guest Justin Michael of Rams Report. Thanks for joining us, Justin.
Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to talk a little hoops with y'all.
Yeah, definitely. As I mentioned, Rams just got back from Florida. Big tournament they played, Gulf Coast Showcase. Dropped the first one against Louisiana Lafayette. Get a W against the host team, Florida Gulf Coast, and then they dropped the last one against South Dakota State. Wasn't the greatest tournament for the Rams, but also hard to say it was a complete disaster.
Yeah, it was definitely unfortunate to see them pick up their those two losses that they did pick up. I personally think that the teams they played, they were pretty tough. I mean, they definitely put up a fight against CSU, so I don't think that there's definitely things CSU should have done better, like not turning over the ball so much. I definitely would have liked to see them rebound a little bit better on both offense and defense. But overall, I think that they're going to be better from it. They're going to learn and come back and be better here tomorrow. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's a valuable experience for the team. You know, like you said, disappointing to go and pick up 2 road losses. But, you know, going into the tournament, Nico Medved said it's a chance to kind of prepare, you know, for the Mountain West tournament because you got 3 days and 3 games. So you get to simulate that kind of postseason feel. They ran into some pretty talented teams. Louisiana has a ton of size. They hung with Kansas till late in that game, you know, on the road in Kansas. So they're a team, they got a ton of talent. They're probably going to win their conference. So while you would have liked to have seen CSU play a little bit more efficiently in that game, not really that surprising that they lost it. You know, that third game against South Dakota State, probably a little more disappointing just from the sloppiness. You know, they turned it over a lot. They just didn't play efficient basketball. Now they get a chance to come home. We'll see what they learned.
Yeah, I think they looked a little vanilla in that tournament. Like you mentioned, turnovers. They played some talented teams, but they also didn't seem to take advantage of opportunities and showcase their talent. They played well against Florida Gulf Coast, but it was kind of what they did at the beginning of the season, and it just seemed to work against Florida Gulf Coast. I'd like to see them start to take it up the next notch. I know they're still working on what this offense is and what this team is. They're only 6 games in, but a tournament like this is where you'd kind of like to see some of the flash start to happen. Maybe some player goes off for 25 here or there. I know we've seen Kendall Moore do that in the first game, but it was also against Colorado Christian.
Yeah, I also think it's important for them to show that intensity when they're not at home, and that's where they were this weekend. I think that they need to continue to have that hype when there's not so much hype around them, like hyping them up and supporting them.
Yeah, definitely. Next up, we're going to talk to Justin. Justin, last time we did the show, we had Eddie Herz on. He gave us his not-so-hot take about the team's ability to rebound the basketball. What's your not-so-hot take about the team this season?
You know, my not-so-hot take is going to be about PRentiss Nixon. PRentiss Nixon transferred to Iowa State in the offseason. He was CSU's leading scorer last year at 16.5 points per game. You know, my take is that this team is actually better off having lost its leading scorer. I know that sounds a little bit, you know, odd. Rarely is a team going to lose, you know, its leading point producer and be better off for it. But as we've seen, you know, Kendall Moore, the true freshman, he's allowed to come and play a ton of minutes early. He's really learning a lot, allows him to play loose in that scoring role that he kind of thrives in. And we're seeing some of the veteran guys, Anthony Mazenton-Bonner and J.D. Page, step up as facilitators. Without, you know, PRentiss in the mix, they're allowed to increase their role. We've really seen them mature, and I think this team's going to benefit from it in the long run.
I really like that point. I never would have thought about that. You know, I don't think a lot of people were thinking that way when PRentiss Nixon was leaving, but it's really kind of showing to be true that a lot of this offense is starting to be more widespread, and they're not so dependent on, hey, if so-and-so doesn't have a good game, which last year was PRentiss, we still might win and we still might have a good game. We have more people we can throw in there, and they have that depth on this team. So,
I definitely think there are I agree with you. PRentiss is not the worst loss. He's one of the worst volume shooters in the history of CSU basketball. Going back 20 years, nobody has had a worse shooting percentage or scoring rate, shooting the ball at least 12 times a game as a CSU Ram than PRentiss Nixon. So he definitely wasn't efficient. You also look at how young this team is and some of the people that they lose, and it can be tough, but you mentioned Kendall Moore getting his opportunities. I think Lorenzo Jenkins, another guy who has gotten more opportunities because of the loss of a guy like PRentiss Nixon, who's a volume shooter who occupied a lot of offense.
Lorenzo Jenkins, that's a great point. He's a guy who we didn't really see a ton of under Larry Eustace. He didn't really see the floor. He comes in this year. He's been Mr. Consistency for CSU, lighting it up from three-point range. The Rams as a team aren't really shooting all that consistently from behind the arc. But he's a guy who's pretty much shooting at, I think, 43% a game, something like that.
Yeah.
So, if he matches that all season, you get Kendall Moore scoring 20-plus points a game. Adam Thistlewood's already coming up. This is going to be a team that's going to be able to score in numbers, even with, not having a lot of experience together.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see what this team's going to do all season, but especially going into their game against CU this weekend. They play Saturday at CU. They've won the last 2 games against the Buffaloes. So what are you guys expecting to see in this game?
Well, I think I mentioned earlier they looked vanilla in the tournament. They're going to have to spice it up. They're going to have to do something to get it going. They do have Southern Illinois on Tuesday. That's kind of a game to help them get in the flow, but it's a rivalry game. They're going to have to come out with some energy. They came out with energy in the games they were coached under Larry Eustace. Going to need to see them be spicy, do something, a flash in the pan to get it going if they want to play well against a pretty good CU Buffaloes team.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for here, I already said it, but I really want to kind of accentuate this point that they really have to limit their turnovers. We saw a lot of that when they were in the Gulf Coast Showcase. And going into a rivalry, there's going to be a lot of energy. And if we're in Buffalo territory, or if the Rams are in Buffalo territory and they're having a lot of turnovers and CU's scoring on those turnovers, like in Florida, they had 20 turnovers for 30 points. It really hurt them badly. So if we can limit those, I think we'll be okay. If we can hang with their shooting percentages and keep just being aggressive on defense, I think it'll be good for CSU this year.
Yeah, you brought up Larry Eustace. He always seemed to get this team amped for the CU games. He had a lot of success in those big moment rivalry games. People are really excited about Niko Medved right now, but this is going to be kind of the first opportunity for CSU fans to see Niko Medved's team in a big moment against an opponent that the fans want to beat pretty much more than anybody on the schedule. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Nothing matters more to CSU fans than beating CU. So if they go out, they win a 3rd consecutive game in Boulder, it's going to be a pretty good look for a first-year head coach.
It is. It's a very good look. I wonder about Medved, though, and the intensity. I know he's an intense guy. I've been to practices. I've seen him, getting in it with his players in a very constructive way, really eye-opening with how he talks to his players. And so I've been impressed, but I've yet to see them play this year with that kind of intensity, that kind of rivalry atmosphere. And of course, they haven't played anybody you'd deem a rival, but it still leaves me kind of waiting for a little bit more. But the CU team is going to be a team that's really tough that they're playing against. They've got some really talented players.
No, absolutely. This is a team that they're going to challenge CSU. This is the best team that CSU has faced so far this season. They have, decent experience. They got Tad Boyle leading the way. Really great head coach. We'll see how they come out after this tournament.
They got some really talented players as well. A guy like Mackenzie Wright, who, Justin, I know you're really excited about. He's a sophomore guard for them, an extremely talented basketball player. They're a good team. They're a tough team to beat, and it's going to be big.
Yeah, McKinley Wright is easily, a top 25 player in this country. He's a guy who came out last year, shocked a lot of people as a true freshman, showed how explosive he can be. If CSU is going to have any chance of coming away with a big road upset, limiting McKinley Wright is going to be huge. Yeah,
he's definitely been a player that we've seen play really well already this season. You see some of the numbers here, 14 points per game, 5.5 assists, 5 rebounds a game last year. He's back at it again. Now he's averaging 2 steals. They've only played 4 basketball games so far, but he's averaging 12.5 points, 2 steals, still with the 5 assists, still with the 5 rebounds. He's a dangerous weapon for sure, and all freshman Pac-12. Pac-12 usually has some pretty good young guys, so that's saying something about the team you've got. We're going to switch it over a little bit to women's basketball. We've got Kyle Witter here with us, and Kyle's our women's basketball reporter. The women played a basketball game on Sunday that we actually got to watch. It wasn't all the way over there in Florida, so we do have some highlights from the game. But this is a team that has lost 2 rivalry games early. They lost to Northern Colorado. They lost to CU, and that CU loss wasn't exactly pretty either. It wasn't a close one at the end for sure. This is a team that's been rough for to start off.
Yeah, I've said this before, but it seems that this year is a building year for the Rams women's team. You figure, again, they've lost 3 seniors from last year, and so they have a lot of new people who are trying to figure out how to play with the chemistry of the team, how to play with the others who maybe have been there for a little bit longer. But we also saw a little bit of a secret weapon in Leah Davis. She played for the first time on Sunday since her injury last year down in New Mexico. I feel like that kind of turned around the momentum of the game a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see when she's fully back in how that affects the Rams game.
Yeah, it's a team that, like you said, they need chemistry. They're young. They're still working with each other. They got the freshman Molly Mouncey, who's looked good in games, but she's a transfer. She's new. It's that relationship that they still have to build. And Coach Ryan Williams coaches a little bit more of a defensive, slow, tempo-type team. So building that offensive chemistry can be really tough.
You know, it could be hard, especially, you know, you bring up Molly Mouncey. She's a great, probably the best pure jump shooter on the team. She's got, you know, in the gym kind of range, girl who likes to line it up from pretty much wherever she feels comfortable. Really exciting, ton of talent, but she's struggling with efficiency right now. She's putting up a high volume number of shots, which, you know, Ryan Williams has said multiple times that's what he wants her to do because she's such a talented shooter. But what's killing CSU right now is she's not making these shots. And when you have a player, you know, shooting 13, 14 shots a game, kind of like what we talked about with PRentiss Nixon on the men's side, and they're not making those shots, it can really hurt your team, even if you are as talented as Molly Mouncey is.
It can, and when you're a defensive team too, that likes to play defense, that likes to slow down the tempo, it can get you out of sync. That's what happened to them early on against Cornell. They missed 7 3-pointers in the first quarter there, and they found themselves down 7 points early. They came back to it. They got a win at home, but it's going to be, as you said, Kyle, kind of a learning year for this women's team. That they still kind of have to put the pieces together. They're there. The pieces exist. There's some talent. Like you said, Leah Davis comes back. I still love Grace Kavalu. Molly Mouncey, excellent pure shooter. They just got to figure out how to mesh a little bit better this year, I think.
The one thing that I have seen this team do really well early on is kind of establish itself in the post. They've got, you know, Tatum Newbert, who transferred in from LSU. She's got decent size, and she likes to play physical, kind of use her hips to get under the rim. And, you know, Laura Devo, who is, you know, led the Rams in points dang near every game this season. She's not going to blow you away with, you know, off-the-charts athleticism or numbers that are going to jump out, but she's going to, you know, get nearly a double-double every single game, and that consistency is huge.
And Ryan Williams, he's been here a while for a reason. He's a good head basketball coach. Well, that's all we have for you guys today. Thanks for joining us on the Around the Rim. I'm Bryan Buck signing off for Kyle Witter, Justin Michael, and of course, Jessica Mendoza as well. Have a great night, Ram fans.